This episode may not be suitable for all listeners. Therefore, listener discretion is advised.
That's the funny sound.
Hello, strange ones.
I'm Lisa.
I'm Faith.
And I'm Sharon.
And this is She Sees Weird People.
¿Cómo están, mi little enchiladas?
Ooh,
Oh my God, we gotta start that over.
Enchiladas.
No, Mom. No.
I'm old. I get to do what I want.
Oh, shoot.
Anywho. How's it going, everybody?
Swell. It's just swell.
Yeah. We
Swell.
still keep losing at softball. We're not winners, okay? But it's still fun.
That is the redeeming factor. We were just called enchiladas.
Yes, enchiladas.
That is a very New Mexican pet name, okay?
Is it?
It is now.
I think of this song by Akon, and he's like, I can give you the whole enchilada.
I think he's talking
Like,
about...
are you even from New Mexico? Don't talk about enchiladas if you're not from New Mexico.
Yeah, but I think he's talking about a different kind of enchilada than you were, Mom. She's almost done.
Y'all are so nasty.
I think he was too, because the song is a love song. So
The whole enchilada, man.
he's going to give it all to her.
All or none.
Oh, God.
I love enchiladas.
Me too.
That was very imaginative. Thank you both for that visual.
Well, do you like enchiladas, Mom?
Not anymore.
You
I've been
want
working
Akon to
on-
give you the whole enchilada?
Yeah. What?
He'll do it. He wrote a song about it.
Good Lord.
He's got it.
I've been working on, about, I don't know, a few years ago, I took this course on how to do wheat beating. And so now I am taking the techniques that I learned, which is like you mix beeswax and pine pitch and make you make a paste out of it, basically a very super sticky paste, and you put it on things and then you would hear the beats. And I've been trying to do that. And that's all I've been doing for a week.
You really did not want to talk about Akon's enchilada.
Do you really want to talk to me about what do you want to talk about, your dad's enchiladas? I mean,
Okay.
So that's what I thought.
Not on live radio vision.
Radio.
I find it quite funny that it's okay to tease me about it, but you don't want to talk about the reality of my enchilada, of my Mexican.
No, I just don't want the rest of the world to know how okay I am with talking about enchiladas.
That's the funny sound.
What's your story today, Mom? What do you have to say?
All right.
Get out of these enchiladas.
Yeah, what's the whole enchilada of this story?
Speaking of the whole enchiladas have absolutely nothing to do with my story today.
No, but it does make me hungry. I'm super excited because I'm going to eat crab. At Crab Fest.
Breakfast.
Breakfast.
Just what everyone's looking forward to.
Okay, girls, here we go. You ready for this story?
I was ready for this story in particular.
Okay, I want you to close your eyes and imagine.
All right.
I'm not.
Imagine that you are a 15-year-old boy or a 14-year-old girl in 1851 on a covered wagon heading west into the New Mexico-Arizona territory. Your parents, along with your 6 siblings, are headed for California. Your sweet mama is pregnant with baby number 8, And your 5'1" father, with his 10-foot tall dreams, is determined to give his family the life that he has always dreamed of. Now you're in the desert, and the terrain is rocky and treacherous and filled with cactus and mesquite and red sand. It's between 70 and 90 degrees during the day in February and 20 degrees at night. The wind is so strong and full of sand that some days you are sure that wagon's just going to tip over. And other days it's so beautiful and calm it just takes your breath away. Today is one of those days. Your father stops the wagon on the banks of the Gila River. Your family gets out of the wagon to stretch. You are in awe of the beautiful skies and open spaces, even though everyone is on edge because at the last town you were in, just 4 days ago, the people warned you not to go on because of the hostility of the native people against whites. And guess what? You are very white. And because of this, everyone else in the wagon party stayed except your family. You are one lone wagon in the middle of the desert in a beautiful, hostile country. Suddenly, the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, and you turn to see men, some on horseback, coming up over the rise near the Gila River, heading directly toward your wagon. You count 19 men. You know instantly these are native people because of their dark skin, long dark hair, the feathers in their hair, and their primitive attire. And you're panicking. You look toward your father, and he says, "Don't worry, the Indians won't hurt you." And that's the last thing he says to you. He was wrong. In just a few minutes, your parents and all but 2 of your siblings will be dead.
Oh, shit.
Dun dun dun.
See, I had put myself in the place of the 14-year-old boy, and it was scary as hell.
Of course you did. This is the story of the Oatman family massacre.
Ay, ay, ay.
Aye, aye, aye.
That's the fun.
Now that we've set the scene, let me give you some factorooskies.
That's what I'm talking about.
We like these.
In 1837, on September 7th or possibly the 9th, Olive Ann Oatman was born to Royce and Mary Ann Oatman in La Harpe, Illinois. Now, Royce and Mary Ann had 7 children, including Lucy, who was 17, Lorenzo, 15, Olive, 14, Mary Ann, 7, Royce Jr., 4, Charity Ann, 3, and Roland, 1.
So lots of babies.
Lots of babies. Mary Ann was also pregnant with baby number 8.
Oh, my lord.
That's what I'm saying.
Just thinking of my uterus.
I don't even have one, and I ain't about it. Okay,
You don't have a uterus or you don't have a baby?
a baby.
I was like, what did I miss?
No, I no longer have a uterus, which in some ways is glorious and in some ways completely horrible. But anyway.
I was there. I saw it.
Yeah, you two
You
girls.
saw her uterus?
Yeah, they showed us.
I carried a picture around for a while. It was pretty great. Just to gross my kids out. Oh yeah, they took a picture of it and I put it in my drawer to gross the kids out for a long time.
She's all
fun.
stunned.
You know. So you two girls enjoy your next 300 periods. Anyways, there were members of the Mormon Church. They were members of the Mormon Church, and after founder Joseph Smith died, they became followers of James Brewster. And now they were all known as the Brewsterites.
Yes.
The Brewsterites went on to become what we now know as the Church of Christ. Anywho, this group made plans to head out west following the Brewster. Okay, wait a minute. This group, the Brewster,
I like that.
following the Brewster.
The Brewster.
It's like a rapper.
Sounds like a college kid's nickname.
Yeah, the Brewster.
It's at the Brewster's house.
This group made plans to head out west following Brewster to a settlement in an area near the Colorado River. They would meet in Independence, Missouri, and on August 14th, 1850, the wagon train of approximately 90 Brewsterites left for the Colorado River in California. They're all heading on to California, but all of a sudden there was some dissension caused in the group, and they split near Santa Fe, and Oatman and a few others headed south to Socorro. And the dissension was all about who was the boss. Okay, so they split up. Now, early in 1851, they reached Maricopa Wells, Arizona, where they learned that the trail ahead was rough and the Native Americans were very hostile. The rest of the party decided to stay in Maricopa Wells, Arizona, but Royce Oatman, determined to create the life he had envisioned for his family, chose to move on. So, February 18th, 1851, just 4 days into their trip, while the family was near the banks of the Gila River, a band of 19 Yavapai Indians approached the Oatmans. Royce assured his family that the Indians wouldn't hurt him, and they requested tobacco and food. So Royce obliged he smokes a pipe with them, and they have a little chat, but when they requested food and began to rummage through the wagon, Royce told them, "We just don't have any food to share. My family will starve if I do." So the Yavapais, they group up and they talk among themselves. And this is when the attack began. They began bludgeoning the family with clubs. Royce, 8 months pregnant Mary Ann, and 4 of their children were killed on the banks of the Gila River.
Oh, God.
Now, Lorenzo was gravely injured, and when the Yavapai discovered that he was not dead, they threw him into a ravine, leaving him to die. But Olive and Mary Ann were taken captive. Now, Olive's 14 and Mary Ann is 7.
Oh, she's so little. They're both little.
She's little. Now, when Lorenzo regained consciousness, he went to go find his family dead and his sisters missing. And so he walks through the desert, trailed by wolves, and he would smack them on the nose so they would retreat. A friendly native that recognized him from an earlier meeting with his father Royce found him in the desert and helped him survive the journey. Now, Royce was very friendly to the Indians, and he believed that the reason the Indians were hostile is because of the way that white people treated them, and if you just treated them well, they would treat you well.
And I think that's correct to a certain degree of why, but some tribes were just more violent than others, right?
Well, the Yavapai were a faction, I'm pretty sure this is right, that they were in a faction of the Apache, which the Apache are in that area. Okay, so Lorenzo makes his way to the settlement where he was given medical attention, and 3 days later he returned with some men to bury the remains of the Oatman family. The terrain was so rocky that they could not dig a grave, so they just covered them up with rocks. Now, it was reported that the remains were reburied several times until they were finally moved to the river for final reinterment by pioneer Charles Poston. Lorenzo never stopped looking for his sisters. And if you go to this place where they were, if you look that up, there's still a memorial where their bodies are buried.
And how old is Lorenzo at this time again?
15.
15, okay.
All right, now meanwhile, Olive and Mary Ann were forced to walk the long distance barefoot. They took their shoes to keep them from leaving any recognizable footprints. Mary Ann was completely distraught and in shock, and often verbalized she wished they would just kill her. Any resistance or crying was met with a club to the head or a beating. And with painful, bloody feet, she many times refused to keep moving and begged for death. Finally, one man just pulled her up on his back and carried her the rest of the way. It was approximately 145 miles.
Jeez Louise. Vaughn, my son, when he was 7, he wouldn't even walk 20 feet.
Yeah, and when you say things like that, it just I'm trying to imagine Vaughn in that scenario, and no.
Yeah. Even to this day, he won't walk further than 100 feet without complaining.
He won't go to the refrigerator unless he has no choice.
No, you're not wrong, though. These poor children.
I know. Nana, will you get me something to eat? Nana, will you make me a plate? Nana, I'm thirsty. I know.
This morning, sorry to interject here, but I just got to let you know, that there was a huge fight because he wanted French toast and his dad didn't feel like cooking. And Mom was like, will someone just feed me? As if we don't feed him. I was like, go get a Pop-Tart, get cereal, have some fruit. No, we were starving him to death. And if he tells you that, I want you to know it's true.
And I want you to know that he's like that because they spoiled this baby.
I don't know what she means.
Rotten. Anyway.
Who, me?
Yeah, you think it's all on you. Who, me?
Now, when they reached the Yavapai village near modern-day Congress, Arizona, they were treated very poorly. Upon arriving, they were surrounded and teased and taunted and slapped and spit upon. They learned that they were to be used as slaves. They were forced to forage for food, carry water, and firewood. They were frequently beaten and mistreated. They were permitted very little food. They learned enough of the language to take commands, and Olive stated, they took unwarranted delight in whipping us beyond our strength.
Oh.
Yeah. After 1 year with the Yavapai, the Mojave tribe came to trade with the Yavapais as they did every year. When they realized Olive and Mary were captives there, the Mojave were concerned about the well-being of the girls and wanted to rescue them from such cruel treatment. At first, the Yavapai did not want to part with the girls, and the Mojave left without them, but after a few months, the chief's daughter, Topeka, returned to plead for the girls, and she was successful. Now, the Mojaves bought the girls for 2 horses, 3 blankets, some vegetables, and some beads. The girls, not knowing their fate, left the Yavapai village with the Mojave, escorted by Topeka, the chief's daughter. They walked along with the members of the tribe, and when the people saw the girls struggling, they stopped. They made them shoes from leather and shortened the distances that they traveled each day to accommodate the then 8 and 15-year-old. This must have been a very welcome relief. The Mojave were known as a very jovial, friendly people. They were peaceful, and they weren't violent and aggressive like the Yavapai were. So this was probably an enormous change for the girls.
Yeah.
Relief.
They welcomed the girls into the tribe, and they were cared for by Chief Espinola and his wife Espanil, and Topeka, their daughter. They took great interest in the girls. They gave them plots of land to farm, fed them, and included them in tribal activities. Unlike the Yavapai, the Mojave were said to be very jovial, and they loved to laugh. The men were described as tall and beautiful. And when chores were done, they would swim, run, play games, and socialize. They lived in thatched roof huts on stilts because of the flooding river. They dressed in wolfskin skirts or bark skirts and painted their faces. They wore tribal tattoos that were used so that they would be recognized in the afterlife as an identifying mark.
Sweet.
So both Olive and Mary Ann received these face tattoos. According to the Mojave, these marks were only given to their own people voluntarily. I mean, you weren't forced, leading historians to believe that they were truly adopted into this family. Now, Olive and Mary Ann learned the language and would sing Sunday school songs and tell stories of their beliefs, and that people would pay them in beads and felt, rare and valuable to the Mojave for the entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
I read the book called The Blue Tattoo, which I highly recommend, and it really was a good book. It really was. The girls shared their language, or they learned their language, and they shared stories about their beliefs and their cultures. And these women thought their stories about their Mormon beliefs were so funny. They would just laugh. And so it was entertaining to them. But because they were just as much a part of the tribe as everyone else, it would be like a piano player with a tip jar. And they gave them valuables to share. And sometimes they would give them these red felt pieces. And the girls would save this felt and then later create garments for themselves.
Okay, so sounds like, for the situation that they were in, kind of fulfilling to some degree, as much as you could be after what happened.
Adapted.
Well, The early stories that Olive told about this tribe were she loved them very much, and they weren't captives. They were part of the community that they lived in, and they spent a lot of time.
They're like saviors.
Yeah, and they really found Chief Espinola and Espino to be their adoptive parents, because they believed everyone else in their family was dead.
Yeah, and it's like they said, adapted. You would start adapting if you didn't think your family was out there, which most of their family is not out there.
Now, in about 1855, the tribe fell victim to a severe drought, and many of the children from the Mojave village died from malnutrition or starvation. And this included Mary Ann. She was 11 years old when she passed. Olive grieved her sister's death greatly, and though the tribe's burial practices were to cremate the dead, they allowed Olive to bury her sister in the ground as per her wishes and her religious beliefs. So that's another clue that she wasn't captive. She was respected and part of the tribe.
Yeah, they respected the way that she needed to say goodbye.
Now, though Olive had chances to speak to the whites or the Mexicans to ask for rescue, she never did. It is thought that she had no intention of leaving because she loved her adoptive family, and the tattoo on her chin would have brought her much scrutiny should she return to the white people.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
If you look it up, if you look up on Google Olive Oatman, you're going to see this girl with this tribal tattoo on her chin in Victorian clothing. I'm sure you've seen it. Lots of people have seen it and not known the story, and this is that story.
Yeah, when I saw it, I was like, oh, I know that photo. And now I'm like, oh, I know that story. She looks pretty cool, honestly.
She was beautiful. And the tattoo was pretty. The meaning of that tattoo during the time she was growing up, I mean, when you get to a place, if you've been in this place long enough and you think, this is my family.
Yeah.
And everyone else in the village has this tattoo or whatever, and you get that tattoo, and then you feel part of the community.
Especially after your family has been slaughtered.
Yeah. There was several times that, I mean, she didn't know Lorenzo was alive, so she really didn't think she had any family to return to. So like I said, she really integrated herself into this tribe. Mm-hmm. There were surveyors and trappers that passed through the area, but when they would come, she either hid or she wasn't recognized as a white woman. Her hair was dyed black, her skin was tan, she wore traditional Mojave clothing that covered her only below the waist, and she wore beads and traditional Mojave attire. So I mean, she was completely and totally integrated into it. And if you're dark haired and whatever, and they dyed it black, and so she could be like everyone else.
Yeah.
But her eyes were blue and non-native, and that was a very big, that was a telltale sign. So later on, many rumors about blue-eyed native children and ideas that she had married a native man and other rumors about her relationships with the tribe would circulate, but Olive always denied any kind of sexual interaction with any Native Americans in either tribe. Now, though the Mojave tribe was had very liberal sexual beliefs, it's believed that Olive never married or bore children with anyone from the tribe, contrary to rumor.
Oh, I know why, but you tell me.
The tribe did not assign gender to their children until puberty, and trans, gay, lesbian people were common and embraced. Young people were encouraged to be sexually active, so why didn't Olive partake? Because she was white, and the Mojave believed that to have interracial relationships would make them sick. Any sexual activity, either forced or voluntary, was denied by Olive, who stated, To the honor of these savages, let it be said that they never offered the least unchaste abuse to me.
I mean, I just think it's hilarious that they looked at white people and they're like, it's diseased.
Well, you know what? I would imagine that they probably were at some point.
Yeah, they're probably like thinking like influenza and that kind of thing, but it's just funny that it's like, I don't know, it's just funny.
Well, when the Europeans came over to I don't know what I had in my head at some point. I've recently looked at a map of Native American and indigenous reservations and sovereign nations and things like that, all the way up from, the time of your favorite Thanksgiving pilgrims, Lisa, and
all lies.
and whatever. And it occurred to me that these people were not always on reservations. They were solid from coast to coast. Mm-hmm. They occupied this land, and every inch of it almost. And what wasn't occupied was food and just so many.
Well, and they respected wildlife and like the elements and stuff like that. So what they weren't using was like, it still had its uses and it was respected.
And it was sacred. No one ever they didn't believe they owned it.
Yeah.
They were part of it.
Sacred is the word that I was trying to think of.
Yeah. So, and I really should, I think about how the things that we know right now and what we're taught and about how indigenous people, why they're on reservations and whatever, absolutely is not what I learned in school either.
Mm-mm. Yeah, I know.
And it's become I've become quite passionate about it. So when I read this story, it really occurred to me that the reason that the Yavapai were angry was because you enslaved them. You brought your disease over from Europe, things that they had never had to have an immunity to, and suddenly everybody's getting sick, so no wonder they thought that.
Yeah. No, it makes perfect sense.
It does.
That's the funny thing.
At some point in the winter of 1955 or 56, the Army received word that Olive, now 19, was living with the Mojave. A Yuma Indian messenger named Francisco, with a message from Commander Burke at Fort Yuma, requested her return to them or to know why she had chosen not to return. At first, the Mojave had hid Olive and even denied that she was white. During the negotiations, though, they expressed their love for her, and Francisco made a second attempt to convince the Mojave to release her upon threat that the whites would destroy them if they didn't release her. Francisco was telling him, if you don't release her, they're going to come for her and they'll just wipe you out.
Yeah.
So after some discussion, where Olive was included, the Mojave decided to accept the terms and release her for 2 horses, blankets, beads, and food. On February 28, 1956, Olive was ransomed, quote, air quotes around that word, and escorted on a 20-day journey to Fort Yuma by Topeka and Francisco. Now, Olive cried when she left, and the tribe mourned her leaving. One story reported that she ran to the river and tried to cover herself with sand, either to hide or to cover her shame. By all reports, she wanted to stay with her adoptive family.
It's so sad. Like, there's no win there.
No,
and her family's already gone. She doesn't know her brother's alive.
She's like, I finally have new connections.
Yeah, now she's lost her family again.
That's the funny thing.
Upon arriving at Fort Yuma, Olive insisted that she be given proper clothing before she entered the fort. She bathed to remove the dye from her hair and the paint from her face. Inside the fort, she was met with cheering people, and she couldn't understand why they were cheering. She was an instant celebrity. But within a month or so, she and Lorenzo were reunited.
Her brother?
Her brother. So there's a bright spot for her.
Yeah. That is a pretty bright spot. Can you imagine going so long with thinking your whole family's dead and you, like, what are the odds?
Yeah.
Here comes your brother. Hey.
Now, the initial reports that Olive gave the commander at Fort Yuma and Star reporters was that she was well treated by the Mojaves. She stated that she could have visits with the whites if she had wanted. She spoke with affection about the two women that had taken her in and about her adoptive father who rescued her. Topeka and other people of the tribe would also be talked about with love and affection. But later, those statements would change. And here's where things start to get a little shady.
Of course.
A Methodist minister named Royal Byron Stratton
Just great.
was hired by Lorenzo to write Olive and Lorenzo's story. They had to find a way to support themselves. So they thought, well, you know, she's a celebrity. Everybody wants to see her. Everybody wants to know her story. She's got this tattoo on her face. So everywhere she goes, people are asking questions. So we might as well try to find a way to support ourselves. Now
I get it from them, but Reverend Byron was full of so many shits.
Mr. Byron Stratton, Royal Byron Stratton, was truly full of so many shits, and he knew an opportunity when he saw it. The book was called Life Among the Indians, Captivity of the Oatman Girls. And some of this money would be used to further Olive and Lorenzo's education. They both went back to school. And book promotions and lectures would support Olive as she tried to navigate her movements back into white society. But it really put her in a predicament, because to live in white society, she knew that she would have to dial back her affection for the Mojaves. Bluntly, she would just have to lie. Too much sympathy would hinder her re-entry into white society, and the tattoo on her chin made her already stand out.
Yeah.
She knew, and she knew how important it was in white society to have unspoiled virtue, which was the polar opposite of where she had just come from. And she was stunningly beautiful in spite of her tattoos.
Said to be like cool.
Said to be very charismatic and an eloquent speaker. Unlike me, what I'm doing right now to this story. I'm butchering.
I'm a crunch speaker.
But her story was fascinating. Yeah. So she used it, and she traveled and lectured for years about her captivity, telling the story of the savages and the tattoo in an unfavorable light to the Mojaves and definitely to the Yavapai. Yeah. And Stratton, meanwhile, is making money and working her to the bone and working to further his own agenda. So he kept Olive traveling and on the lecture circuit for many years. And she was again held captive, but this time by a Methodist minister named Royal Byron Stratton.
Yeah, that guy gives me douche bumps.
He gave you douche bumps? Is that what you said?
Yeah, he's giving me douche bumps. I can tell he's a douche.
Okay, all right, that's funny. Okay. That's pretty funny. Douche bumps. I'm going to use that. Okay. Because he was a douche canoe, right? I'm sorry.
Yeah, so anyway. There's bumps all over the place. Douche bumps galore.
That's the funny thing.
Enter John Fairchild. Now, she met him through one of her lectures and was immediately courted by Mr. Fairchild and, frankly, his sisters. They loved her. They loved her. In November of 1865, Olive married cattleman and bank president John Brent Fairchild, whose family had been also attacked by Indians. He lost his brother, which may have given him empathy for Olive, and it kind of connected them.
Yeah.
They lived in Sherman, Texas. Now, Olive stated that this was the happiest time in her life. And Mr. Fairchild, either to protect her or to remove her past, bought every copy of the book he could find, and he burned it.
That's hot. It is. If my man did that, I'd be like, burn those books, baby.
Fairchild was not a fan of Stratton, and Olive severed her relationship with Stratton. In fact, she didn't even invite him to her wedding, and I think she was literally looking for a way. I mean, what wouldn't you be after a while if this guy was just like, no, you got to keep telling this story, and she's like, God, I want to let go. I would like to have a life of my own. No,
Yeah.
Keep telling this story, and this handsome man comes in, and he's like, I hate that guy, and you're like, well, I guess I won't be talking to him anymore. And he's like, don't invite him to the wedding, and she's like, right on. So
If you insist.
now, free from him, Olive was able to settle down and do things that she enjoyed. She did charity work with orphans, and the Fairchilds adopted a 3-week-old girl that they named Mary Elizabeth after both of their mothers, and they called her Mamie.
Oh, that's so cute.
Little Mamie.
I knew a Mamie in high school, and she was also rather cute.
Mamie? I've never heard that.
Mamie? M-A-M-I-E.
Mm-mm.
It's cute.
It's cute.
Now later, she began to suffer from headaches and eye pain and would be in bed for weeks at a time. She was said to suffer from both great bouts of depression and even spent some time in Canadian clinics. And toward the ends of her life, she began to have heart trouble.
Yeah.
Well, no shit.
Yeah, she went through some
The body knows all. It keeps the score, man. It holds in all the junk.
Good book, by the way.
Yeah, it is a good book.
Yeah, I mean, she got clubbed. She had to walk like 100,000,000 miles. I know that made a lot of sense, but then like actual trauma.
Emotional.
Yeah.
There were a lot of ideas of what caused her ailments, but I mean, and she suffered. There's no way she didn't suffer from PTSD,
Yeah.
Stockholm syndrome,
I don't know.
neurasthenia, now called chronic fatigue syndrome, nervous breakdown, depression, and I even wrote in my notes. I can't wait to hear Lisa's take on this.
Well, I'd have to meet with her, but no, I mean anybody who
always need more information.
anyone who goes through that kind of trauma is going to have a lot of emotional difficulty, and then she went through a lot of physical trauma too. Of course she had headaches. She got clubbed like 87 times. She probably had like 90 TBIs, probably PTSD, like you said. And who wouldn't be depressed after their whole family got massacred, and like her sister made it with her for a while and then she didn't. It's just people are not made to take that kind of horror.
Well, if there had been, I suspect, I don't know, if there had been sexual trauma for her, especially in the first tribe, the Yavapai,
Yeah.
she would never say it. Not in a million years. But she didn't have her own children. They adopted one. So I wonder if there was something that happened to her that kept her from having children.
Maybe. And she was also stuck with a bunch of savior cowboys for a while there too. And I'm just saying, men were not known for their honor in the Old West. Anything could have happened to her.
Yeah, and if she did, if I was her in that time, I would never say a word. It was
Me either.
It was part of her.
She gets Salem witched.
Yeah, she would have, and it's part of her persona was that she managed to come out of the Old West, being abducted by natives and came out chaste. And I mean, she was 21.
Yeah.
So, And if she did, I mean, if she had had kids, because there was rumors afterwards that there was children running around that looked like her and things like that. If she had had children, I mean, she's sitting there at this meeting and they're all talking. They all loved her. There's a good chance. I mean, why wouldn't you get on with your life? You're 21 years old and that's kind of like prime fall in love time.
Yeah.
And if I was sitting around in that meeting and it was me and I had a husband and kids or whatever happened, but even if I did have children and the answer was they're going to come and take my kids, they're going to kill these people, I have to go.
Yeah.
It's me or them. I mean, I would never say a word. I would just go.
Yeah, so would I. That's crazy to think about. That's a possibility.
Honestly, I didn't even think about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I thought I kind of loved this book. The like I said, it's called The Blue Tattoo. But I really dove into the story when I was listening to it, and I was thinking about the difference between the spirits in the tribes, like the anger in the Yavapai that took her, and their entitlement to whatever the Oatmans had, and the fact that Mr. Oatman was a kind man and had no intention of fighting with the Indians there.
Yeah.
And then being rescued by this tribe who obviously believed or worshipped or whatever it was they did completely differently, and who weren't angry. They were wise, but they weren't like mean. Their families, I mean, they were known for their laughter. So, they played all the time. They enjoyed each other. They got whatever work done they needed to do, and then they basically were just a community. And that had to be confusing.
Yeah.
And,
Bittersweet.
And an enormous, I mean, after you've been through something like that, how long would it take you to trust the people there? And once you did, and you did believe in them, why would you ever want to, what would you have to do?
Yeah.
Now, Olive died on March 21st, 1903, at the age of 65 of a heart attack, and she was buried in Sherman's West Hill Cemetery. Her daughter, Mamie, later had a baby girl. She didn't live more than a few weeks, but her name was Olive.
Oh. Yeah, that hurts my heart.
One more interesting thing is that there were rumors that Olive died in an asylum after going crazy. That's not true. But what is true is that Mr. Stratton did live out his years in an asylum and died there in 1875.
Wow.
So,
what are the odds?
So,
if anyone ever makes up a rumor about me at the end and says that I went crazy, just be like, it's true, and it's y'all. She keeps talking about y'all.
yeah.
They've done this.
You wouldn't believe the stuff. She's got books and journals on y'all. Y'all don't even know.
Yeah, right now, I'm reading A Clinical Guide to Gender Affirming Care, which I feel like, that second tribe there probably contributed to that book some, because they were so gender sex friendly.
We were in Santa Fe, and we went to the American Indian Museum there.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a whole display of this transgender, I don't know if he was transgender or if he was just a gay man. I can't remember. But
He's just gay, man. He doesn't count.
Well, I'm not saying he doesn't count. I'm just saying he has a lot less fluff. I don't know how to say it. I mean...
So, no, I'm teasing you.
I'm doing the best I can as a heterosexual white woman who's a Gen Xer, okay? Give me a break here.
You trying.
But it was talking about them being called two spirits. That it wasn't that if you were a man and you felt like and you were gay, or there was something else going on with you, that you had two spirits. And I thought that was a lovely way to put it. A lovely way to describe this human that is simply the way that that he is or she is. You know,
I like that.
I do too. I like it a lot.
It's like another way to say like gender fluidity is okay. Pride Month, and I am just gonna say all the people are beautiful people.
I agree.
But yeah, crazy. That's a crazy ass story.
I know. It was a whole roller coaster.
That
a whole roller
she's one of my heroines. She's one of my favorites because she was a woman who did what she had to do to survive at a time when women were not even, I mean, couldn't even have a bank account. So I'm like,
Yeah.
I think she's one of the, she has definitely on the badassery scale. She's pretty high.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. She survived a lot. And as far as I could tell, did it pretty gracefully. I think her tattoo on her face is sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it was a very interesting story. I'd be curious to know the truths of all those little parts you brought up, but I doubt we'll ever get them.
Well, I don't think that we need to know, really. I mean, we can speculate and think about it or whatever, but
She protected it
she behaved
for a
herself.
reason.
She did. She behaved herself like a lady, and did the best she could do. At least to where
Yeah, and it's like whatever people don't know, she protected it for a reason.
Yep. And it might have been her kids. It might have been whatever, but yeah.
Super interesting.
Well, that's the end of that story.
I loved it.
I did too.
We came.
We saw.
We heard some really weird shit.
Today wasn't as weird as usual, but still.
After Albert Fish, I needed something a little more happier.
PG.
Yeah, I did definitely.
Yeah, that bro is despicable.
Well, you guys have an amazing week.
Indeed. Ditto, Mom. Ditto, cousin.
All the lows.
All the loves.
Bye.
Bye.
I'm Lisa.
I'm Faith.
And I'm Sharon.
Join us next time on She Sees Weird People. Thank you so much for listening. If you have a weird story to tell or case idea, contact us at weirdpeople@sheseesweirdpeople.com. Be sure to hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at She Sees Weird People Podcast. This podcast was written, hosted, and produced by Sharon Metcalf, Faith Dunovit, and Lisa Metcalf. Produced by Sedona Brave Studios. Music by Purple Planet Music. Sound effects by Pond 5.